This story takes place about 6 or 7 years ago, and honestly, it still gives me chills just thinking about it. It was New Year's Eve, and I was driving my then-girlfriend, Duda, home from a party. It was late, well past midnight, and the roads were slick with ice from a snowfall earlier in the day. The streets were mostly deserted, which isn't unusual for that time of night, but it added to this strange, eerie quiet. Duda was half asleep in the passenger seat, kind of dozing off, and I had some music playing to keep myself awake for the rest of the drive. We were probably only about 10 minutes away from her place, just cruising along, when it happened. Out of absolutely nowhere, a woman was just standing in the middle of the road. She was directly in my lane, facing my car as if she'd been waiting for us. My headlights caught her, and the first thing I noticed was what she was holding. Down by her side, clutched in her hand, was a large kitchen knife. It wasn't a pocket knife. It was a full-on chef-style knife. My heart just dropped into my stomach. Her face was this mask of pure anguish. I couldn't tell if she was crying or screaming, maybe both, but her expression was something I will never forget. My instincts kicked in, and I slammed on the brakes. The car skidded on the ice, and I yanked the wheel hard to swerve around her. I was terrified of hitting her, but as we passed by her, she lunged. She didn't just stand there. She moved toward the car and swung the knife at us. I heard this awful scraping sound as it connected with the side of the car. The impact, combined with the ice and my sudden swerve, sent us into a full spin. The world was just a blur of streetlights and snow for a few seconds. We did a complete 180 and came to a screeching halt, now facing the direction we had just come from. And there she was again, right in my headlights, about 30 feet away. She was limping, but she was coming toward us. And she was screaming. It wasn't words. It was just this raw, animalistic sound that cut right through the night. I got a better look at her this time. Her clothes were torn and filthy. Her hair was matted and wild, but her eyes, that's what really scared me. They were just empty. There was nothing behind them, just this black, vacant stare. The terror was overwhelming. I was frozen for a second, my mind just racing, trying to process what was happening. Duda was awake now, completely frantic, screaming at me to go, to just drive. Finally, my body caught up with my brain. I slammed my foot on the gas pedal. The tires spun on the ice for a heart-stopping moment before they caught, and the car lurched forward. We were driving right at her. I thought she'd move, that she'd jump out of the way. She didn't. Instead, she threw herself onto the hood of my car. Suddenly, she was right there. Her body was sprawled across the front of my car, one hand clinging desperately to the edge of the hood for grip. With her other hand, she started stabbing the windshield, over and over. Thud, thud, crack. Thud, thud, crack. Her face was inches from the glass, her empty eyes locked directly onto mine. I could see every detail of her face, the desperation, the madness. It felt like she was looking straight into my soul. I was screaming. Duda was screaming. I started swerving the car violently from side to side, trying to shake her off. The car was fishtailing on the ice, and I was barely in control. I just kept thinking, I have to get her off. I have to get away. After a few terrifying seconds that felt like an eternity, she finally lost her grip. She flew off the side of the car and rolled hard onto the pavement. I looked in my rearview mirror. I could see her lying there, motionless, a dark shape on the snowy road. A part of me, the part that believes in helping people, screamed at me to stop, to go back. What if she was seriously hurt? What if she was having some kind of psychotic break and needed help? She was a person, and I might have just been responsible for her death. I started to slow down, my mind torn. But Duda was adamant. "Don't you dare stop," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "We've been drinking. The police will show up, they'll breathalyze us, and they will never, ever believe this story. They'll blame us. She was right, in a way. We'd had a few drinks at the party. We weren't drunk, but we wouldn't have been at zero. The story was so insane. Who would believe it? A woman with a knife attacking a car in the middle of the night? It sounded like a scene from a horror movie. So I listened to her. I drove away. We left her lying there on that dark, icy road. The rest of the drive to her place was silent. I dropped her off, and we barely said a word. The next week, I took my car to the shop. The windshield was cracked. There were deep scratches down the side, and you could even see the individual knife marks where she had struck the metal. I had it all fixed, trying to erase any physical evidence of what happened. But I couldn't erase the guilt. For months, I was consumed by it. I checked the news constantly, every single day. I searched online for any reports of a body found, a missing woman, an assault, anything on that road. There was nothing. Not a single mention. It was like she had just vanished. Whenever I tried to talk to Duda about it, she would get annoyed. Just drop it. She'd say, it's over. Nothing happened. She acted like it was just a bad dream we needed to forget. But I couldn't. That night changed something between us. I saw a side of her I didn't like, a coldness I hadn't seen before. Our relationship fell apart, and we broke up a few months later. That night was definitely a huge part of why. To this day, I still don't know what to think. Did I leave someone to die on the side of the road? Or was she not as hurt as she looked? Did she get up after I drove away and just walk off into the night? I'll probably never know the answer. But every New Year's Eve, when the clock strikes midnight, I can't help but think of her face, her empty eyes, and the sound of that knife hitting my car. It's a memory that I'm sure will haunt me for the rest of my life. Thanks for listening to my story. If you have any similar experiences or thoughts on what might have happened, let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. Stay safe out there. This is a story my dad told me, something that happened long before I was born. My parents were huge skiers back in the day. They even owned shares in a couple of ski lodges up in Vermont. One of them was this beautiful rustic place right on a lake, just off Route 100 in the Lake District. My dad's best friend, Victor, and his wife, Lisa, were co-owners with them. It was New Year's Eve. My mom and Lisa were away for some reason. So my dad and Victor decided to head up to the lodge by themselves to ring in the new year. Just the two of them. They were upstairs, in this big room with massive windows overlooking the frozen lake. The snow was coming down thick and soft, blanketing everything. They were just relaxing, drinking a few beers, listening to music. It was perfectly peaceful. And then it wasn't. Out of nowhere, a massive, silent flash of bright light erupted from across the lake. It wasn't like lightning coming from the sky. This light shot up from the ground, illuminating the entire opposite shore. It was blindingly bright, but completely silent. The moment the light vanished, Victor, who was staring out the window, grabbed my dad's arm. "Did you see that?" "I think I saw something moving out on the ice." My dad was skeptical. "Moving? No way. There's nothing over there." And he was right. That side of the lake was pure wilderness. No houses, no trails, not even a dirt road for miles. It was just dense woods. Impossible for anyone to be out there, especially in a snowstorm on New Year's Eve. But Victor was insistent. "I'm telling you, I saw something." They stood there for a moment, peering into the darkness, the snow still falling heavily. As they were about to dismiss it, they both heard it. A faint sound carried on the wind across the ice. A voice, a child's voice, crying, "Help!" Every rational thought flew out the window. All they heard was a child in distress. They didn't even stop to grab heavier coats. They just threw on their boots, burst out the door onto the deck, and started toward the lake. The ice had been frozen solid for months, so they knew it was safe to walk on. They carefully made their way out onto the frozen surface, their eyes straining to see through the swirling snow. The crying continued, faint but clear. "Help me." It seemed to be coming from the middle of the lake, closer to the far shore. As they got further out, they could just make out a small, dark shape against the white snow. A figure. It looked like a little boy, standing maybe 20 or 30 yards from the opposite bank. He was just standing there, motionless. My dad called out, "Hey, are you okay?" They started walking faster, almost jogging across the ice toward the figure. And then it happened again. Another blinding, silent flash of light, even brighter than the first. It was so intense my dad instinctively threw his arm over his eyes. The world went pure white for a second. When the light subsided and he could see again, he looked to where the boy had been standing. He was gone. There was nothing. Just empty, undisturbed snow on the frozen lake. No footprints leading away. No hole in the ice. No sign that anyone had been there at all. Just smooth, snow-covered ice, stretching to the dark tree line. The crying had stopped. The silence was suddenly deafening, broken only by the wind. A wave of pure, cold terror washed over them. They didn't say a word. They just turned and ran. They scrambled across the ice, back toward the warmth and light of the lodge, their hearts pounding in their chests. They burst back inside, slamming and locking the door behind them, breathing heavily. As my dad was catching his breath, Victor, who was still looking out the window toward the lake, whispered, "Oh my God, he's in the house." My dad spun around. "What are you talking about?" Victor pointed a shaky finger toward the second floor. The window, the upstairs window. I saw him, the little boy. He was standing there, watching us. My dad looked up, but he saw nothing, just a dark window. Still, Victor's terror was contagious. Together, they searched the entire house. It was a big lodge, but they checked every single room, every closet, the attic, the basement. The doors and windows were all locked from the inside. There were no wet footprints, no melted snow on the floors, no sign whatsoever that anyone had gotten in. The house was empty. They tried to rationalize it, sitting there in the dead quiet of the house. Maybe the flashes were strange winter lightning, or illegal fireworks from miles away. Maybe the voice was just the wind, but they both knew it wasn't. Nothing fit. The light came from the ground. The voice was unmistakable. And the boy was real. They barely slept that night. My dad told me he was jolted awake twice by a sound, the sound of a child laughing, somewhere inside the house. Each time, he'd sit bolt upright, listening. The laughter would be clear as day for a moment. Then it would just stop, vanishing into the silence before he could even figure out which direction it was coming from. The next morning, New Year's Day, they packed their bags before the sun was even fully up. They got out of there as fast as they could, driving home in near total silence. They were too shaken to even talk about what had happened. In fact, my dad said they didn't speak about it again for years. They never even told my mom or Lisa the full story, afraid they wouldn't be believed, or maybe just too afraid to give the memory more power by speaking it aloud. My dad is a very logical, down-to-earth guy. He spent his whole life trying to come up with a rational explanation for that night. He's considered everything flares, strange atmospheric phenomena, even a shared hallucination, though he knows that's not what it was. But nothing works. There was no source for the light, no reason for a child to be on that lake, and no way a person could just vanish into thin air, leaving no trace. To this day, he has no idea what he and Victor saw on that frozen lake. He just knows it was something not of this world, and he never, ever went back to that lodge on New Year's Eve again. Okay, I have a story for you that still gives me chills. I've gone over it in my head 1,000 times, trying to find a logical explanation, but I just can't. It's the kind of thing you see in a movie, not something that happens in real life. But it happened, to me. It all started on New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2024. I was at this rooftop party in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, with a bunch of friends. The view of the skyline was insane, the music was good, and the vibe was perfect. Around 11:30 at night, just half an hour before the ball dropped, I went to grab a drink at the bar. And that's when I saw her. I started talking to this girl. We just clicked instantly. You know that feeling when you meet someone and the conversation just flows? No awkward pauses, no forcing it. It was like that. She was incredibly funny, super charming, and had this magnetic energy. Her name was Matra. She even spelled it out for me, My-Tree, and pronounced it my tree. To make sure I wouldn't forget, she grabbed a pen from the bartender and wrote it on the back of my hand. The next thing I knew, the countdown started. 10, 9, 8. We found each other in the crowd, and when the clock struck midnight, we kissed. It was one of those perfect New Year's moments. We kept dancing for a bit, and then around 12:30, she leaned in and said, "Want to get out of here?" Of course I did. We took a cab back to my apartment in the East Village. We hooked up, and afterwards, we just stayed up for hours, talking. It felt like I'd known her forever. She told me so much about herself. She was from San Diego. She was a painter, and she told me she used to do graffiti and murals back in the day. Her birthday was April 28th. She had 2 cats named Mia and Cosmo. Her dad was a patent lawyer. Her best friend was from this tiny town in Germany called Hillesheim. I remember all these little details because the conversation was so vivid. Her clothes smelled like smoke from the party, so I offered to wash them for her. She threw them in my laundry machine, and I gave her one of my t-shirts to sleep in. We finally fell asleep in the early hours of the morning. When I woke up on New Year's Day, the sun was streaming through my window. I rolled over, expecting to see her, but she was gone. The space next to me was empty. I thought, okay, maybe she had to leave early. Didn't want to wake me. A little weird she didn't leave a note, but whatever. I wasn't too worried. But then things got strange. Really strange. I went to my front door, and it was locked. Now, my door doesn't auto-lock. You have to use a key from the outside to lock it. And from the inside, you have to turn the deadbolt. It was locked from the inside. There's no other way out of my apartment. The windows barely crack open, maybe a few inches, not nearly enough for a person to get through. I live on the 4th floor. There was no way out. I started to get this weird feeling in my stomach. I checked the whole apartment. Under the bed, in the closet, the bathroom. Nothing. She was just gone. Then I remembered her clothes. I went to the dryer, opened it up. It was empty. Her clothes were gone. And the t-shirt I lent her? Also gone. It was like she had just vanished into thin air. I was completely baffled. I had no way to contact her. No number, no social media, nothing but the name Matra, still faintly written on my hand. Later that afternoon, still reeling from the weirdness of it all, I decided to call my best friend Garrett. He lives in Hong Kong, so with the time difference, it was already late in the evening for him. I just wanted to tell someone about my crazy night. When he picked up, he sounded off, distant. I asked him what was wrong. He sighed and said, "Man, I had the weirdest night." He told me he'd met this girl the night before at a New Year's party in Hong Kong. They hit it off, hooked up, and when he woke up, she was gone. No note, no trace. I laughed. I literally laughed out loud and said, "No way, the exact same thing just happened to me." I was about to tell him my story, but then he started describing the girl he met. He said her name was Matra. He even spelled it out, pronouncing it my tree. My blood ran cold. I asked him to keep going. He said she was from San Diego, a painter. Birthday April 28th. I just stood there, speechless, as he listed every single detail she had told me. Then he said, "Yeah, and she told me she had a cat named Mia." And I cut him off. "And another one, named Cosmo," I finished. There was a long silence on the phone. Garrett was stunned. How did you know that?" he asked. I hadn't told him any of this. These were details she shared with me in my apartment just hours before. He even sent me a couple of photos he'd sneakily taken of her at the party. I opened them, my heart pounding. It was her. The same smile, the same eyes. It was undeniably the same girl. But here's the part that's impossible. The part that makes no sense. Hong Kong is 13 hours ahead of New York. Garrett met her around 11 p.m. on December 31st, Hong Kong time. That was 10 a.m. in the morning on December 31st in New York. I met her at my party at 11:30 p.m. New York time. That's a full 12 and a half hours asterisk after asterisk she was with him. We looked it up. A flight from Hong Kong to New York takes a minimum of 15 to 17 hours. There is absolutely no physical way she could have left his apartment in Hong Kong and made it to a rooftop party in Brooklyn in time to meet me. It is physically impossible. We've spent months trying to find her. We've searched every combination of her name, painter, San Diego, online. We've looked through social media, art forums, everything. Nothing. T's like she doesn't exist. So, what happened? How could one person be in two places, halfway across the world, on the same night? How did she vanish from my apartment that was locked from the inside? Everything about it felt so real. The conversation, the kiss, her touch. But when you look at the facts, the only word that even comes close to describing what happened is ghost. I still have the faint mark on my hand where she wrote her name. A fading reminder of the impossible girl from New Year's. We never figured it out, Eve, and I have a feeling we never will. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever experienced something you just can't explain, let me know in the comments. And if you like mysteries like this, make sure to subscribe. You never know what story I'll tell next.